is Bob Beckel,
This is Cal Thomas, a conservative who is pro-life,
a liberal who once worked for Jimmy Carter,
who favors smaller government,
who believes in big government.
and in a town full of cheap shot artists, I've never heard Cal take a cheap shot.
But even when he's wrong, he's likable. And this is Common Ground.
And this is Common Ground.
Welcome to Common Ground, a video version of Bob Beckel's and my bi-weekly USA Today column in which we try to figure out how to bridge Washington's partisan divide. Well, Bob, during the holiday season, it looked like common ground finally broke out in Washington. But you wouldn't think so over this agreement between the president and the Republican leadership on keeping the Bush tax rates at their current level and cutting by 2% the Social Security tax on all of our checks and extending unemployment. Sounds like a decent compromise, but both sides went nuts.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me congratulate you on that tie.
Thank you
it's
very
very
much.
nice, Christmassy tie.
I appreciate
it. Listen, I didn't like this when it first came out for one simple reason, which was it gave tax breaks again to people making, and this is the more amazing thing, the Democrats changed their position. Instead of 250,000 as a cap, it was $1 million, and still the Republicans wouldn't go along with it. But having said that, now that I've watched this pretty carefully and listened to the right wing scream about it, then maybe there's more here than I thought. And actually looking at it, I think it really is sort of a stimulus package, if you will.
The thing that bothers me so much, and you just touched on it, and Bernie Sanders, the independent/socialist senator from Vermont, all you guys on the left are so exercised about how much people make. I don't care how much you make. I don't care how much Bill O'Reilly makes. I don't care how much Barbara Walters makes. And even if you taxed every millionaire and billionaire at 100%, that wouldn't balance the budget, Bob, because the revenue isn't the problem. The overspending by both parties is the problem.
This is the reason I fixate on wealthy people like yourself, is that the disparity between incomes is the greatest it ever has been in this country. The middle class has gone nowhere the last 10 years. The top 2% have gotten wealthier and wealthier, and there's just something wrong about that. But having said that, now look, one of the things that the Deficit Commission, the last thing we did our discussion on,
right,
kicked off here a lot of interesting debate, not the least of which is tax reform, which I like.
I do too.
Okay.
And I affirm what the president said about that. I'm glad he came out the other day for a reform in the tax code. I hope he follows through on it. That's something the Republicans and Democrats ought to agree on.
Here's the advantage of it. Now, we're not getting off the topic here about the tax thing, but you all probably have heard about this. But the tax reform idea, doing away with these exemptions, is a good idea. But the most important thing is it's brand new. So both sides don't come with pre-existing positions that they refuse to get off of. And that's what I like. And I think Obama's going to use the State of the Union to emphasize this. But going back to this, the payroll tax cut is important because it'll put money directly into the system right away. The extension of unemployment is important because it too will put money back into the system right away. So it really is stimulative, and it probably will help the economy. Maybe 1% in unemployment, maybe 2%.
The key, though, Bob, is the spending has got to be brought down. This has been the key issue with incoming Speaker Boehner and the other Republican leaders and the 60-some new members of Congress who are coming in, who are Republicans, many of them Tea Partiers. You've got to get the spending under control. All of this other stuff is just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the sinking Titanic. The spending is the problem.
You know, I kept listening to Republicans after the election saying, you know, the Democrats don't pay any attention to the election, the message that voters are sending, which they want to cut spending. And then they got a deal that in essence is probably going to be another $1 trillion. So, you know, there's enough blame to go around here. But to get serious about cutting some of these programs it's going to have to happen. I mean, at some point you can't duck and you can't hide anymore.
Look, how about something that has been suggested? I've written about it in my own syndicated column. Why don't we have reauthorization of every program and agency every few years? Reagan used to say the only proof of eternal life in Washington is a government program. Once it starts, it attracts incredible numbers of people who think that we can't do without it. And if you try to cut it, what about the children? Oh, old people will be starving in the street. There's no reason that programs can't be reauthorized every 2 or 5 or 10 years.
Well, you know, it's not a bad idea, but the other thing about a permanent Washington establishment, how about defeated members of Congress? They don't ever seem to go home. They go
Send
to
them home.
K Street to become lobbyists.
Couldn't agree more.
We're going to have to wrap up here, but let me just say that I think the idea of reauthorization is not a bad idea, but you have to do it spaced out because there's so many programs. Yeah. You would tie down Congress for the entire year. But look, I think we both, our common ground here is we reluctantly agree that this deal between Mitch McConnell and the Republicans and President Obama is okay. We'd like to see it different. Both you and I would like to see different aspects of it. But it's a start, and hopefully it leads to tax reform. Right?
Cut the spending. Tax reform. I'm with you.
Well, I guess that's common ground. Now we want to reach out to you, our audience. A few weeks ago, we told you what we thought Congress should focus on and stay away from this coming session.
And you know what our priorities are for the new Congress, but if you were running the show in Washington, what would your first priorities be? Tell us, and we'll pick out a few from your statements for possible inclusion in an upcoming Common Ground.
Go to opinionusatoday.com to find out how and to see our latest column. Thanks for tuning in, and come back again after the new year for the next webisode of Common Ground.